are.
Hey, that's Carter on the
St.
drum.
Augustine.
And we're back.
Still alive.
The Lord Podcast.
Still alive.
This is teZa, and yes, when you hear the drum, you know we're back home. And so, the adventure of the bird. Carter, let's tell everybody what happened, because we are back safe and sound.
So I think where we left off, we were at Defusky, which is the first landfall into South Carolina after crossing the Savannah River, and we elected to not go on shore because there was a bunch of tie-up at the dock, and the next morning we just elected to go north and go on into Hilton, go in and cross the Port Royal Sound and go to Beaufort. That was the plan. We changed our thinking.
When we don't go to shore, we're anchoring. Right. Just assume that. And 90% of the time we are at anchorage, and we never spent one single night anywhere else except on the boat, except to go for a walk or an adventure, right?
And it was a great anchorage there at Defusky too. It was big and wide open, and it was pretty, and it was a sweet little island, and the anchorage part where we were was pretty remote. There was a few little houses and things there, but basically it was a country little place, and it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah, well, we didn't go ashore that time.
So the next day we headed out, and pretty quickly it opened up. It got busy, and then it opened up into Hilton Head, which is like a bad dream for people that are looking for the outdoors. It's just nonstop tourists, everything. So we pushed on through that and got to the other end, and figuring we would cross Port Royal Sound and make Beaufort. And I got to say that I misjudged Port Royal Sound for two or three things. I wasn't paying attention to the weather, and we were reading a book that was very interesting because we just were not interested in the whole Hilton Head thing. And as we worked our way, and all of a sudden we're out there.
By reading a book, he means I'm reading aloud while he's navigating and steering.
Yeah, we found ourselves out on the Sound, and it was a little tricky. The navigation was tricky, and we kind of got a little bit sidetracked and going the wrong way. I knew we were going the wrong way, and I just had to try to figure it out. It took me a while to figure out where exactly the line was because we didn't have a compass. And we finally figured it out, but by the time we did that, we were out in it, and the weather had gotten bad, and it was hammering us pretty good. And then the engine quit.
In the middle of nowhere, after it had been fixed by our wonderful grease monkey Cody.
But I hadn't been paying much attention. Actually, we just ran out of fuel, so we pulled the dinghy that was behind us up to the boat, and it wasn't necessarily a very easy operation either because the waves were pounding around pretty good. But anyway, I yanked it out of there and got it lined up, and thankfully cranked right back up again.
Okay, I just got to tell everybody that Carter is so strong. Him talking about this, bringing out the fuel tanks, because, the bird does not have fuel tanks on board. So we had to bring these portables. And so he's an amazing person who can just deal with. How much do you think those tanks weighed? Like 40 pounds maybe? But yeah, but
maybe a little more than that, maybe 50 or 60. But they're 6-gallon fuel tanks, gas tanks. But
heavy.
But the weather was bad, and it pointed up the fact. Number one, when the engine quit, wasn't good.
No.
And so it gave me pause because I'd been trusting the engine, and then all of a sudden I said, "Oh, geez, if we were to lose our engine out here, that wouldn't."
But
be
it
good.
was because we were out of gas.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. Let's just tell our friends what the book was, because it was so engrossing, and it was not just an easy book. It was called Believing is Seeing, and it's more or less a quantum physics equals spirituality proof by this amazing neuroscientist or physicist and mathematician genius.
He's got 3 PhDs:
Michael
astronomy,
Gillen.
Math, and
What's his name? Michael Gillen.
Michael Guillen.
So anyway,
great book.
We were not just reading Sherlock Holmes or some cloak and dagger mystery. It was really amazingly in depth, and we should not have been reading that kind of a book when we're in the middle of a journey. But for various reasons, we were intrigued by it. So there we were. The engine went out, and then what, Cappy? You got the gas?
So in the process of it all,
You got the gas?
it came to me that we were not in a good situation because the weather had gotten bad and it was going to get worse. It was in the afternoon, and I had by then figured out exactly where we were, and so we made the choice to go back and anchor to the night for the night and regroup and really get clear about the weather, because the Port Royal Sound was bigger than I thought it was. Plus, it was hazy, and we couldn't really see the other side very well. So, and since our binoculars weren't up to snuff, it wasn't a good. It was not a healthy. It wasn't very completely safe. So back we went, and we found this great little anchorage back off in the corner where nobody was, around the Hilton Head area, back in this marsh. And in thinking about it, in the middle of the night, I woke up thinking about it, and I knew the weather. I knew if we could probably make it without a problem, but if we didn't, and we had some issue, the weather was going to get bad in the afternoon. And so if we were out there, we'd be at the mercy of another boat or tracking a sea tow down. So it was a potential
We were trying to outrun
bad
the bad
situation.
weather. Right, outrun the bad weather that we knew was coming.
So I asked teZa, I said, well, now here's the deal. Well, we need to get up at first light and make a run for it, and I'm pretty sure we're in, we'll probably be good. We'll make it probably for sure.
Probably, maybe.
She didn't like that. She didn't like that description.
Probably,
and
maybe.
I said, well, we could. She said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, we'll have to get the sea tow, and if we can't reach them and we blow up, it's a big sound out there. It's bigger than I had envisioned, and it's a potentially dangerous situation.
And I burst into tears.
Literally. She didn't really burst into tears. Maybe
did.
she did.
No,
I didn't notice the tears.
You don't remember.
But she did say, are you out of your mind?
I think I put
I
an
said,
F.
why would
I
we
think I put an F in
do
front
that?
of that.
Why would we? We have a perfectly good house in St. Augustine. Why would we risk our lives for why? So anyway, long story short,
We decided
she was
to head
right,
back.
and I realized, our equipment, we would really needed another engine, and we needed to really upgrade, and we needed to have we needed better equipment than we had.
Wait a second. Let me talk about the binoculars. I mean, it was making me crazy to even find these little tiny, tiny markers off in the way, 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 way distance, and sometimes I couldn't find them. So my anxiety was based upon a lot of my previous experience with sailing, was always using a compass, and I'm really good at steering it with compass or the stars at night. And so we did not have a compass, and we didn't have a GPS until we found out later that we actually did, but we never turned it on. And so I was very anxious, and the binoculars were designed for people who had no eyelashes, because the binoculars went right up to your eyeball so you couldn't see anything. They were cheapos from China. We had given away all our good binoculars to our kids. So we were ill-prepared. So at this point, yes, Carter said...
None of that was an issue for
me.
me. None of the navigation stuff was an issue for me, because I'd spent a lot of time in my life navigating in those situations with channel markers and stuff. It was not an issue for me, but it was an issue for her. So she was much more anxious about it than I was. But we did need better binoculars, and we really. It was more than I remembered, because I had come through there in my late 20s. Of course, I was alone, so I didn't have to worry about anybody else either. If I died, I died. But now I had her along, and so there was another issue. It wasn't just me. So it was only fair to tell her that of the risk, and it was also only fair to be more careful. So anyway,
I appreciated that.
So we made the decision at daylight that we should just either spend another $6,000 or $8,000 and upgrade the boat, which I definitely didn't want to do, and get a new engine and put in a new mount and fix the boat so that it was really proper and it was going to be 100% good, or just call it enough And when I said, "Well, maybe we should just call it enough," she was so relieved.
Whew,
And
I'll say.
and so that was okay. So
Yeah.
we figured, well, that's the end of the line. So we just gonna, let's just take it easy, go slow. And I will say,
Wait a minute. It wasn't the end of the line. We were already like well over like 10 days away from where we started. We had a journey to get back home. Now it became a journey of retracing our steps and having a more comfortable, easy time because we're going over territory that we already had gone through.
right.
So to me, it was like a much more relaxing adventure, and it wasn't the end of the line
So
at
I
all.
was only halfway aware that she was feeling as tensely about this as that. However, I will say that it was physically taxing for me beyond what I had expected. So I had not anticipated being so
Notwithstanding
tired
that we
all
are
the time.
both approaching 80, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So back we
wait
went.
a minute. I also want to say at this point, I was taking Tylenol every day because my body ached. And you're talking to someone here who does yoga every day. I exercise. I'm in pretty good shape, but my body was so aching from just the maneuvering you have to do on a little tiny boat, going in and out of these little tiny things. And I'm not complaining, but I really could not exist without the Tylenol. So 3 cheers for Tylenol. So okay, Carter, Captain Carter, what's on? Let's talk about the return trip.
So we headed back and we got out of Hilton Head as fast as possible, and we got to Defusky, back to the sweet little beautiful Defusky, and the pulling up to to the dock was available, so we pulled right in, and we spent 3 or 4 hours walking around, and it's just great. Defusky is a very interesting
We
place.
really wanted to see our friend Big Black. We talked about it earlier. He had been born. Was he born on Defusky, or his parents
Yes.
were? He was born on Defusky, and we were going to try to find the grave of his father. So we did find out that there were 6 cemeteries devoted to the Geechee people, who that's what they're called in that particular neck of the woods. And within walking distance, we could get to one. So we spent a long time exploring the beautiful old cemetery closest to where we anchored.
Not just the cemetery, the general South Carolina woods and giant trees and giant oak trees, and the overall woods and outback of the South Carolina Sea Island environment, which is big. 9 of the largest trees of their species exist in South Carolina. So
Wow.
they've got a lot of big stuff there.
Right.
Not unlike Florida. And Florida's got some big things too, but they've got the biggest oak tree, the biggest cypress, the biggest, a lot of different things. So anyway, we had a good time in Defusky.
Wait. When we first crossed over from Hilton Head and entered the territory of Defusky, we noticed that it was very much like Hilton Head. And so little by little, that island is becoming commercialized and built up with McMansions. So by the time we got to the southern tip of Defusky, that's when we went ashore, and that's when we felt like we were exploring the wild that Big Black knows about. Like, he said he hadn't been there since he was 3 years old, and he had been told that a golf course covered his father's grave. Now, we don't know if that's true or not, but
all the sea islands. Well, it's not long for this world in Defusky as far as being wild goes.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of they're clearing and building houses and stuff.
because it was so close to Hilton Head, that's why.
Yeah.
So we tried
But
to...
it's not. There's no way to get there except by boat.
We tried to really honor the beauty of that island, but just to tell you what a dichotomy it is, because on the northern end there's the McMansions, and where we anchored, I went to the lady at the little restaurant there, and I said, "Oh, I bet you have Wi-Fi," and she just looked at me and said, "What? What's that?" They did not have Wi-Fi, so there's this disparity, and it's interesting when you see it on island life, where there's the super rich in one section that's close to civilization, and yet the people are still living simply and humbly on another section. Okay, Cappy, where next? after Defusky.
So that same day, we went south, crossed back over into Georgia, and went back down and spent the night in a little. The weather was bad, and the weather was gonna be bad, and so there was a little spot that we knew of that was close and had land on all sides, and that we knew wasn't going to be real nasty weather-wise at Anchorage. So we made it there just before dark and anchored in. There was a bunch of boats in there. It's
That
a
was
little
Isle of Hope,
Isle of
right?
Hope Marina.
Yeah.
And we were able to nestle in there and spend a nice night.
And what a great anchorage you did, Carter, because, it was a crowded place and the weather was coming and there was only so much room, and Carter just snuggled right in there, and we dropped the hook and we were safe and secure, and, we did a lot of good seamanship. We should be proud of ourselves for handling the boat and all our equipment so well.
The next morning it wasn't so, we slept in a long time because it was supposed to be bad all day, but it wasn't bad. And so by 9:30, 10 o'clock, it wasn't bad. It wasn't raining real hard, and the weather was okay. So I said, well, let's just head out. And there were plenty of places we could anchor, and it was okay. So away we went, and I think we made it all the way to St. Catharines that night. We did. We made it all the way across two relatively large bodies of water and crossed over to the great St. Catharines, which again is a beautiful big barrier island that has got it's a private island owned by some kind of a French animal group that has lemurs and zebras and all kind of stuff. And you're not allowed to trespass anywhere on it, but you can trespass on the beach. So if you anchor up close to the beach, and it's a pretty treacherous in there, but we by then we're trusting our anchors real well. So we were able to anchor up close to the beach. Well, we got there at dark, so we spent the night in the creek, and then in the morning we came and anchored up right next to the beach, secured the boat real well, and we went ashore and spent almost the whole day walking the beach and maybe 3 or 4 miles and
taking great photographs.
And it's remote.
Carter really took some wonderful photographs that you'll probably be seeing on his website.
Pretty interesting place, because the tip end of that island was really shallow, and it was real treacherous on the ocean side, and we got there kind of during the day. It became low tide, and it was big sandbars out there. So it was interesting. I never really seen a place that looked like that. It was just so totally treeless and just so barren, and so little tiny creeks right on the ocean where the waves were breaking over, and then they were gone. They were like a mile away. So interesting place, and varied, and a lot of trees dead on the beach. And
we thought we saw lemur footprints on the beach because we went long distances, but I kept hoping I could call in the zebras or what other animals, but we saw not a single animal.
But that's pretty good that you can get to a place like that. I mean, you can access that place from the land they have 2 or 3 places where south of Savannah, where they'll take you. The people, you can hire somebody to take you out there, and it's worth going. It's pretty interesting.
Except you're not allowed inland. You
can't go on the island.
So
you can go on Blackbeard Island, which is across the way and just to the immediate south, which is where we went the next day. You could go into various places off of I-95, north of Brunswick, south of Charleston. South of Savannah. But then there's this Blackbeard Island, which I'd never heard of, another very remote national wildlife reserve. And it was actually the first place that they had a bow hunt on a national wildlife reserve in the entire history of the United States.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing place. It's 5,000 acres. And
didn't it get its name?
I didn't know anything about
because
it.
Blackbeard supposedly buried a treasure there, but nobody's ever found a single doubloon.
It's just
but
tourist trap
we
stuff.
were drawn to it. You can imagine Blackbeard. We're kind of like gypsy pirates anyway. So Carter determined to go to Blackbeard.
Well,
so.
we came across, I had given up the idea because there was a creek to get in there, and I didn't know anything about the creek, but the internet said it was good and that there was water, and there was deep water all the way to the dock, to the government dock, and then there was some houses, and there was a place, and then you could trespass freely at will as long as you were off by dark, and it was 5,000 acres of woods, and nobody was there much, hardly at all, ever. So I said, man, that's a wild place, an interesting place. So as we were crossing, the weather got better, and we just were sailing by the marker to get into the creek, and I just couldn't resist it. Because there it was, number 11. So I said, well,
Plus,
maybe we ought to go take a look.
It was absolutely
really pretty,
gorgeous.
yeah.
I mean, it was very alluring. We just were drawn to
And it
to
was
explore.
remote. And so we went into the creek, deep water, 10, 12, 15, 18, 28 feet in some places, a long way in. And it was the chart was marked well. So we went quite a ways in there to where I thought the dock would be. Well, we got in there, and there was no dock. So then I could see that then it wasn't very well marked on the chart. It was just a little sliver of the creek, and then it went back around another mile or two, and then there was a place where obviously that must be where the dock was. So we kept going, and there was deep water, and then we started kind of slipping over these little bars where it would get shallow, and then finally, and again, I wasn't paying attention very well. We were on an outgoing tide, and I should have checked that, but I didn't. But anyway, finally we run aground on a little oyster bed.
Wait a minute, you don't run aground on an oyster bed. You go, it's not like a sandbar. It's really unnerving to hear the crunchiness of it, and so it was quite sudden, quite noisy.
But I was just off the channel a little bit. I mean, you try to read the river, but it's tricky. It's hard to read. I'd never been in there, and so I chose to go on one side, and I should have chose the other side. But I wasn't that far off the channel, and so we stopped, and so we're cool. And in retrospect,
We weren't cool. We were dead stuck on an oyster
there.
bar.
But if I'd have jumped out of the boat right then and pushed us off, it'd have been a 20-second deal. But I didn't.
You think?
So I'm thinking about what to do. So 10 or 15 minutes went by, and I went out in the little rowboat and checked out and I could see, there's the channel. So we needed to get the anchor out there and pull us off.
And just then we hear the engine of our Savior, the angel that's named Mike. Mike, the crabber.
Mike, the Georgia cracker, fisherman, shrimper.
I swear he was an angel. He was an angel.
He said he was 67 years old. He'd had a heart attack, but he was just out there screwing around. And so I said, well, let me put the bow line on, you can pull us off. So he said, and he recognized it even better than I did. He says, yeah, but he says, it depends on how long you've been here, because you got that 600-pound keel. Did you go out on that sailboat? And I said, oh, shit, I forgot about that. That's true. And as soon as I got off and started pushing, man, we were stuck, and it was not good. And it was heavy, and too much time had gone by. The water had gone out. We were in a bad spot. We were going to be stuck in that marsh.
Yep.
But somehow he and I flammed around and back and forth, and teZa was getting knocked around up on board, and I didn't really realize that. She got slammed up against
I got rather black and blue.
She got pounded, and we found that out later.
So our angel Mike, I mean, he literally had what do they call those? A whaler, and with a high-powered engine, and he went zigzagging one way,
He got us off.
Zigzag, 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 and he wiggled us off.
Well, he was knowledgeable.
Yeah.
He'd been in the water person for 50 years. His whole life he'd spent on the water, so he knew what he was doing. So somehow we got off, but we broke the rudder off the boat.
Wait a second, before we finish with Angel Mike, I call him Angel Mike. So I wanted to give him a little, something. So I tried to slip him a bill. And he said, well, I'm not that kind of guy. And I said, really? Come on, let us give you something, cash, tip. And he said, it just does my heart good to see you guys out here. I mean, he was so happy to see that people like us still exist, who are willing to take a risk to go out and see the world, without all the McMansion and the catamaran and all the big, Loran, and we were just out there. So
it would not have been a good night in that marsh.
He was
sure.
Angel Mike the crabber. So okay, let's
But
talk
we
about
were-
the tiller, the third.
But
the
we were
third
but we were
break
within
of the
rowing
tiller.
distance of the dock, and I figured, I says, that's probably that corner. If we get around that corner, and I went up to the corner, and sure enough, there's the dock. So we could have rowed to the dock if it wasn't the end of the world. We had gone all the way, almost all the way.
Carter,
So-
you're forgetting the tiller broke as we were getting
tiller broke.
off the
And the-
oyster
and the-
bed.
and the-
Let's
and
have
the-
a moment of silence for the tiller. The tiller was disengaged. The rudder was disengaged. We got from the oyster bed after Mike said goodbye and he went off his way because we denied having a tow, and you brought us over using our outboard motor extension arm as the guiding light instead of a rudder.
No, but that's what I always do in close quarters.
Right, so that's-
so it was. We were good to go.
This
in
is the
close
third
quarters.
time the tiller
The big
broke.
rudder.
This is the big break. This is not just the rudder broke, but not just the tiller, but the rudder came off of its hinges.
It came off, but it came out of its hinges, and it didn't break the hinges.
Yes.
Which was like a miracle. Somehow that thing just popped off, and in the process, it snapped the tiller, which is the part that you hold on to in the vessel, but the rudder itself did not break, but it was disengaged from the boat. But it still had its little pieces of metal on it, and they weren't broken off. So that was a big deal to have that not be busted.
Yeah, it was a real big deal. And
So anyway,
wait a minute, there are a couple other things you're leaving out. At this point, you noticed that your phone was not working. It completely died. And at this point, I'm noticing that I could get a text out to our son, who's a boat person, and to another friend, because we wanted to see if we could find the tides. Because, when you lose your signal, there we were, neither one of us were having a phone at the dock. So, like away from the dock, up and further up on the land, I guess because it's away.
There was a house there.
There was a house,
and there was
we got a
somebody there
signal.
living there, obviously, and there was two houses there. It was the national wildlife people had a presence there, so we were good on that part. So we were home free on that part because we were tied to the dock. We could walk to the guy's house.
Except the guy was a grouch.
Well,
And was not very happy about the fact that we were there.
we didn't see him till the next morning. He avoided us till the next
He
morning.
avoided us.
And then when the time came, he helped us up enough to get off and get hold of some people. And
Needless to say, that night I did not sleep much, and you said in the morning you didn't sleep much either because we were trying to figure out how the hell are we going to get out of that.
Well, that we potentially had water in the gas too, so that would have been a disaster.
From the fact that the little dinghy which you had rowed out, it got swamped, and you went overboard. Little details like that we leave out because it's a mystery. So the next morning, let's tell him
we
how
were potentially really
let's tell him how we fixed the
marooned
tiller.
there. So we fixed it. He loaned us his rig, and he loaned us a drill, and we drilled some holes and fixed the tiller. So
And we got in
then
touch
we
with our
put
son.
it back on, and he contacted somebody who's a local guy who was really good in the area.
No, not at all. We called our son with a phone number because the guy who was in charge of the sanctuary there, he was not going to help us at all. We found a phone number that was on the bulletin board, and we called our son, who lived in Gainesville, Florida, who made contact with the tow guy.
But he would have helped us, and there was a national wildlife vessel coming by noon, and they would have gotten us out of there.
Of course.
But
Of course.
the good part was that teZa contacted these guys, and they got this guy, and so he said, "I'm on the way." And so the next thing you know, boom, he's on his way. So that's good. So this guy comes in with with three, and so we discussed it. He was very knowledgeable again, and he had a couple of 200 horsepower big things and a big boat.
Wait. You're going a little fast. The tiller needs a little bit of reconciliation here.
We put it back.
We had to saw off the broken bits, and we had to drill holes for the bolts that we salvaged from the other one.
The guy loaned us his drill for that.
Yeah, and so it was a major repair, and if we messed up, we would have really been in deep dookie, but we didn't mess up, and we're competent sailors, and we got it repaired. And actually, the tiller was better than ever.
It was better than ever. Plus, the rudder went back in its little slots miraculously. That was the miraculous part. That somehow getting it off that bar, we didn't
destroy
bust
it. Right.
So anyway,
it just got popped out of its hinges.
But the end result was the guy and I decided he had fuel. We had a couple of empty gas cans. So this guy shows up. He's got fuel. He fills our other gas tanks. He's got this powerful inflatable boat, and he's a kind of a sea tow person. That's his business. So he just put a line on us and pulled us out of that creek all the way out to the sound. He hauled us all the way out, and we were at high tide, so there was zero issue with anything. He just pulled us out of there.
And he was a really jolly,
all of a sudden
positive
we're out.
person. And he was kind enough to not give us a formal charge, and we just counted our cash, and he was happy with the amount of cash we had. So it was a really wonderful experience being rescued like that with somebody who had such a good attitude.
And he's one of those guys in that area that we could go back and you could hire to have him take you into Blackbeard, so you don't have to have your own boat to get into Blackbeard. These guys have a businesses doing that, so you can go to 3 or 4 places in Creighton Island and around those areas south of Savannah, and tell them that you want to, just look up on the internet. Tell them you want to go to Blackbeard Island, and there are any number of probably 5 or 6 or 8 different local captains that will take you, and it costs you some money, but God, it's worth it because the island is spectacular, and there's just not, it's way more remote than Cumberland Island, which is remote, and way more remote than St. Catherine's. I mean, I'd never even heard of Blackbeard, so there's a great little hidden jewel in America. Blackbeard Island, and I would highly recommend anybody to spend a day or two. They won't let you camp on it, but they're organized to take people on and off. So
I think we should go back to find the treasure. Let's go treasure hunting. Come on.
It's a tourist trap.
Come
that
on,
part
Carter.
of it's a tourist trap. But and also 5,000 acres. That's a lot of acreage to walk, and they probably have some programs where you can rent a night on one of those houses. I don't know. I'll have to look up and see. But it's a national, and they're pretty protective. But the local guys will take you, and they're extremely competent in every possible way, and they know the way. So
so from Blackbeard,
that was a big deal.
After our rescue, we're like heading home, and we're feeling good.
All of a sudden, we're back out on the sound. The engine's running, and we're heading south. So
Tezza is happy.
I think we went all the way, almost to Brunswick that day.
Yeah,
we made
I think
it all
so.
the way down past Sapelo and St. Simons, and we didn't quite make it into Brunswick. We anchored just north of Brunswick, about 5 or 10 miles, and then the next day we went in because the weather was pretty crappy, and explored around and got up late, and made it back to Jekyll Island the next morning, knowing that we had to cross that St. Andrews Sound again, which is that bad place. It takes you way out to the ocean, and you have to go way out because it's shallow.
At Jekyll Island, we had our first restaurant meal. Oh my God, it was so wonderful. Because just for those of you who are interested, we were living off of a lot of canned goods. Thank goodness I brought cans, because nutrition is good with the cans, and we just had
Spam. Great.
And other things.
Oysters, sardines.
Oh, all sorts of
beef
good
stew,
things. And vegetables, and we still had
Joe.
heads of cabbage and onions, and So we were eating really well.
Canned peas were surprisingly good.
Yeah, but that restaurant dinner that we had at, it was Jekyll, wasn't it? Jekyll.
Yeah,
where
and that's a great restaurant. I'd recommend that to anybody on earth. It was called
it begins with
it was
a
like
Z.
Cochran's or something. Zachary's
Zachary's, yeah.
on
It
Jekyll
was
Island
excellent, boy.
at the Jekyll Harbor
Kudos to
Marina.
Zachary's, yeah. And we got a shower for the first time in quite a few days. That's another thing about sailing life, that whole bathroom thing, hygiene. We could have a whole podcast about that because you have to be, ingenious. And there are ways of doing it, but showering is way overrated.
So anyway,
That's our theory.
We had continuing to have the weather issue, but there was a local captain there who said, if you go at daylight, you're going to have a window. If you can get out and get across, which you can because there's a north wind and it's only going to be blowing about 10 max, but 6, 7, 8 knots, you'll be good to go. And you'll have a following wind and following seas, the incoming tide. And it says if you can just shoot across at first light, and you'll be across before you know, and then it'll be all downhill all the way to Fernandina. So that's what we did. We got up at first light, and we motored out the cut, and for the first time, I turned on this GPS that I had purchased that I hadn't used. I didn't know. I remember.
This is the great irony of living with Carter Lord. Okay, explain how you had an app of a GPS of the entire
all those
ICW,
markers.
and you never turned it on.
I don't
How
do
did that
tech
happen?
much. Well, I knew about. I wasn't having any problem with the maps and the charts, except that we couldn't
See the
find
markers.
a lot of those cans sometimes.
We couldn't see the damn markers.
But it wasn't bothering me because I knew they were there, and we'd run across them, and that's the way you do. You just go, and then you know where you are.
But apparently,
you keep going, and pretty soon you find them.
A lot of the markers have been run down and not replaced by the Coast Guard because more and more people are using GPS.
And all the
Lo and
markers.
behold.
Go ahead.
No, most people are using GPS. So we were in the minority, probably the rarity of people who are still using charts. And so we did it the old way, the old-fashioned way. It's good.
So you buy it from Garmin. The charts are in the Garmin, and all the markers are on there, and your little position somehow, no matter what your telephone bars are, I think it's got to be satellite stuff like Elon Musk's Starlink stuff or whatever, because no matter how far out you are and off the grid, it works perfect, and your position works perfect, and it shows you your direction, and it shows you where every single chart is, every single marker is. So all of a sudden, we followed that out, and we knew there were 2 markers that were missing because the local the fisherman, the guy had told me, the captain said, look out because 7 and 8 are not there. I said, well, how can they not be there? That's the most important ones. He says, well, they're in the GPS, so use your GPS. So I turned it on, and God dang it, there they were. And I said, jeepers creepers. Yeah. So anyway, across we went, no problem.
The guy had also told us that we make a beeline out of the sound, and we make our turn because there's a sandbar when the lighthouse and was it a factory or something that
he gave us some local news. There was a tank and a lighthouse, and once we got even with those, that was the turn. But we didn't need it because we had the GPS all of a sudden. So anyway, we turned around and we were out of there, man. We got that perfect wind, and it was just like a breeze. And
so that's great.
We got pushed all the way to Fernandina. We got to Fernandina before lunch. And then we just kept on going across the St. Johns River, and we almost made it home to St. Augustine in the same day.
So the night before we finally arrived, we anchored right outside of St. Augustine, our hometown, because we didn't want to travel in the night, and we didn't want to find an anchorage in the night. We just wanted to have a nice quiet last night in the marshes, and it was peaceful and beautiful.
It was nice
quiet.
out there.
And that's
not much traffic on the Intercoastal.
That's how we ended our journey.
South of the Palm Valley Bridge and and right near Ponte Vedra, and then there was about 15 or 20 miles to go to St. Augustine, but it was a shallow place, so we had to kind of anchor right on the edge of the Intercoastal, and it wasn't particularly wide. We picked the widest spot, but we only had 3 or 4 boats pass us all night long, so that's pretty good. I guess the reality of it is there's very little night traffic, especially in those areas. The tugs go all night, because we used to go all night when I was on the tug. But outside of the tugboats and the extreme professionals, there is no traffic on the Intercoastal out in the remote areas. Around town and in Hilton Head and Jacksonville, of course, there's a lot of traffic all night long, I suppose. But out there where we were in the marsh, there were nobody. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was a beautiful way to end our trip. And the next day, we arrived home. And one last thing I want to say, as we came ashore with our little dinghy after we'd anchored in our own neighborhood, I was on the dock and feeling pretty wobbly. You know, when you come to land after being on the water for a while, you get that wobbling equilibrium, settlingness. Some people call it land drunk. So I was on our local dock, and I saw this fin. I thought, hey, Carter, did you see that? I thought maybe it was a ray. He thought it was a ray.
I thought it was a ray, too.
It was low tide, and so you could really see everything in the water. So I come up, and what was it? It was a whole family of manatee. These big, beautiful sea cows.
3 or 4 of them.
Oh, probably more than that. I counted 6 or 7. Young, old, skinny, fat. Like, it's just...
I was surprised they were in there because there's so many oysters in there.
Yeah.
And it was pretty low tide. There wasn't a lot of water in there, so
they greeted us.
I was surprised that they were in there.
That's the first time I've
suckers.
seen manatee up so close. And they are gigantic animals. They breathe by putting their noses up above the water and, just breathing in instead of like what dolphins or whales do. They
like
suck.
A seal. They're like a seal.
Yeah, but it's so amazing because you just wonder, like, if there's any kind of big waves. I mean, they're probably getting water up their noses and everything. I mean, it's a arduous task for them to
walrus,
take a breath.
Same thing.
Yeah, I've never seen a walrus. This is the first time I've seen an animal like that. I've seen seals before, but I've never seen them breathe from the water. But these guys were very comfortable with us just looking at them, and that was a nice way to come home.
Yeah.
And so many dolphins we saw on our trip. The whole time that we were in the ICW, we'd see dolphins 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day. And they were always coming and be curious about us, and sometimes coming close, sometimes just not being even bothered by our being there. So, folks, that's the story of the voyage of the bird. And we are back home. So, Carter, you got any plans for the future? You got any voyages?
I think that's it for the boat. It's just there's so much, and it's expensive, and you got to have your stuff right, and there's a lot to pay attention to, and if you're gonna be a boat person, you gotta you gotta pay attention. You gotta have your boat right. So there's a big involvement in doing that. So I think we had our time. We had a nice time. It was really beautiful. I gotta say that the Georgia marsh was just
gorgeous,
great, and it's big, and there's a lot of open, and there's a lot of wilderness out there, and it's worthwhile. And there's a lot of places where there just isn't anything except boats and just
and
birds and dolphins and water and tide and big open space. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's really, really nice.
Yeah.
And places to anchor. There's a million places where you could just anchor and spend a week. And then there's those nice islands to visit. So I highly recommend the Georgia coastline. I figured we were going to go all the way to Chesapeake, but we didn't do it. So there you go. We had a good time, and I'm glad we did it, and I'm glad we're home.
And I'm real proud of the fact that we did this, because it has been a long time in the back of our mind, and planning for it and preparing for it and working for it. And so it's a wonderful feeling of completion. And congratulations, Captain Carter, for getting us home safe. And
maybe you can just call me Cap from
maybe
now
just
on.
just maybe Cappy.
That'd be
Cappy.
good. That'd be
I'll make
good.
you
I like
Cappy. Okay. We love you.
All right.
If nobody's told you that today, let me tell you, we have enough love in our hearts for all of you. And next time we'll be talking, I'm going to be starting a new series with Z Lord, and it's going to be more or less like the diary of a spiritual artist. So stay tuned.
All right, you guys.
Okay. Om Namah Shivaya.
Cheers.